This is the Solo to Entrepreneur Show with your host, Lorraine Chai. So today I'm speaking with Craig T. Ingram, a leader in helping medical and health technology companies turn ideas into market successes. He is the CEO and co-founder of International Commercialization Group Partners and has more than Although he looks young, he's got more than 25 years of experience guiding startups and small to medium businesses to launch and grow their products. So, Craig, welcome to the show today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Now, what is, for those that are tuning in that may not be familiar with what you do, what is commercialization, being a commercialization expert?
Yeah, so commercialization is nothing more than releasing your product or service to the market, letting people know that the product or service is available to own, right? And there's specific ways of doing it that are more effective than others. But that is what commercialization is. It's nothing more than just getting your product or service out to the market, letting people know it's available and how it will benefit them in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, so now I assume that your expertise is based on the health industry and the health side of things.
Yeah, it's medical technology and healthcare technology. So
Right.
whether it's a surgical device, a diagnostic technology, maybe it's a software-based technology that would be used in a hospital or surgery center or physician office, anything like that. So anything that would be used by a licensed provider and anything that would be used in a patient treatment facility. So both.
So what and how did you fall into this title?
So, I started selling in my dad's paint store when I was 13 years old. And then
Paint.
paint,
Okay.
P-A-I-N-T, right? Because
Okay. That's
my
nothing to
dad
do
owned
with the medical.
my dad, well, this it's gonna the dots are gonna connect here. So when I was almost 16 years old, my dad got diagnosed with stage 3 esophageal cancer. And we lived in Iowa. And so we were only about 5 hours away from the Mayo Clinic. And during that time, my family got exposed to all kinds of technologies in the US and also in Europe, and we ended up smuggling in a product that was what they call electroceutical medicine, and we smuggled it in the United States um, based on pain management because that's what it was approved for. But what happened was is it actually took good cells and multiplied good cells to overtake the bad cells. So, and people say, well, what does that have to do with paint? Well, I was starting to sell paint when I was 13. And then when I found out about this technology, I got the bug that I wanted to start selling medical devices and surgical devices and therapeutic devices. So he ended up dying when I was 18. And then when I was a sophomore in college, I ended up meeting some people in the medical device industry. And so I started selling medical devices when I was 19 years old in between classes when I was going to university.
Oh, wow.
So that's how I got into the industry.
I'm not gonna question on your process of smuggling things in the country.
Well, it was approved for one thing, but we ended up getting a newer version and had to ship it in under
Mhm.
a different name, and that's how it got in.
Fair, fair. So with the sales that you've done and all the experience that you have, right? Why, from your perspective, why do so many products or product launches fail?
So the majority of people in my industry come from what we call a large strategic. A strategic is a large, publicly traded, multinational conglomerate company that would definitely um, employ somewhere between 40,000 and 200,000 people in a company. And so the vast majority of people come from these large conglomerate strategics. And then they work in small, medium enterprise. And then they go into medical technology startups and they try to commercialize the products and services that an inventor created the same way that it was modeled and the way they learned it at the large strategics. Well, if you look at a division of Johnson and Johnson or a division of Baxter or Medtronic, these are some of the largest medical companies that sell products and services into hospitals, surgery centers, endoscopy centers, long-term care hospitals, short-term care hospitals, and physician offices in the world. And these people are like, well, gosh, since since I was involved in multiple product launches, now I know how to do it. Well,
Mm,
then they try to take the exact same strategies and tactics that was used in a company that has 200,000 employees, like a Johnson and Johnson or a Medtronic, and they try to do it in a company that has 5 to 200 employees in a company. And then the product launch falls flat on its face. And they've burnt through a ton of venture capital money and they just can't understand why it didn't work. And this is why I started my consulting firm is to come alongside these people that come from these large strategics that think they know everything. They say they don't know everything, but when you watch what they do and you watch their strategy decision making and you watch their tactical implementation decision making, what they're doing doesn't work on a small scale. You and I know somebody who is a mid nine figure net worth person in the private equity world that runs companies in the private equity world. And he always says, if it doesn't work small,
mm.
99.999% of the time, it won't work large, no matter how much money you have behind it. And he is spot on because if you look at the data, 32.8 million companies, registered companies, an LLC, a C Corp, or an S Corp is how you're registered in the US.
Mm.
And 32.8 million companies with 500 or less employees in them. Well, the amount of those 32.8 million companies that employ 500 or less employees in each company makes up 98.2% of the employment in the United States. And so if 98.2% of employers or people that are employed are with companies that have 500 or less employees in them, that shows that is the overwhelming vast majority of employers in the United States. But out of those companies, only 7% ever hit a million in revenue,
Yes.
right? You know this data, but this data is not being taught by professors in these MBA programs because they've never done it, right? They're trying to teach things in these programs that they've never done themselves, and most of the time it's completely out of date
Mm.
because it doesn't work. And
So
so,
let's like dumb it down even further, right?
okay,
So with what you were saying is it's like saying there's a success in, let's say, Ferrari, right? They've got an engine that works. And there's another vehicle company that goes, you know what, that works. I'm going to use that same engine in my vehicle, even without understanding that maybe the fit and the electronics don't fit with each other.
well, maybe they've worked at Ferrari. So now they're trying to do a startup
Replicate it. Right.
company, right? And so they're going to do everything they learned at Ferrari, and now they're going to put it in their little company.
Right. So it doesn't work with trying to duplicate something without understanding all the aspects of the,
It does, but it just doesn't work. Like
right.
Johnson and Johnson or Medtronic or Stryker, these companies are not just billion-dollar annual revenue companies. These are multi-billion, right? They have 200, 150, 130,000 employees worldwide.
Mm,
right? And they can launch a new product and they can do it incorrectly, and they're still going to generate hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue because they've got the awareness, they've got the magnetic attraction,
mm,
they've got the customer adoption already with other products, and they've got that customer retention.
right,
So they're going to generate millions and millions and millions of dollars, even if they launch the product wrong and
right.
commercialize it completely incorrectly.
They also
But a
have the
small
branding because
startup doesn't have
people,
that opportunity.
right, but people already, are aware of Johnson and Johnson because of the brand that they've, created back in the day. So
Yeah, I mean, they're a
how
120-year-old
important,
old company.
right, but how important is it for you to be in place in this whole concept of launching a new product for some
The
businesses?
yeah, the earlier so there's two there's a fork in the road. You've got startup companies that are trying to launch a brand new product. Nobody knows their logo, nobody knows what they do. And then you've got established companies that are multi-billion dollar companies, right? And they're also trying to launch products.
Mm,
Most of the time, it's from startups that have started to get a little bit of traction and they buy them up cheap. And then they do a new product launch under the new brand name, right?
mm,
And the sooner a startup gets somebody like me or my team to come alongside of them and work with them, the higher the chance that they will create much more awareness of their company, product, or service that they're offering to their target market. The higher the chance they'll get magnetic attraction, meaning somebody will be aware of their product or company or service in their company, and they'll go, I want to learn more. That's magnetic attraction.
mm,
That doesn't happen enough because people are not understanding the 10 components of commercialization. And so there's a specific way that is more effective than others to create that awareness, to create that magnetic attraction, to foster a prospect into a customer, and then take that customer to a client and have high levels of retention where that person will incorporate that product into long-term usage in their whatever their repertoire might be.
right.
So
But I think what people are missing here is the fact that when companies and businesses get people such as yourself and me into, their business and trying to launch it and doing things the right way, people are forgetting that they're actually saving time and they're saving money. And the thing is, with us in place, it's like they get to move on to the next thing in order to make it work for their businesses or products and service.
that's 100% accurate, right? Like you can go faster and further with other people because you can eliminate or at least reduce the same mistakes being incorporated over and over again. I love it when people are like, well, we're a company that we just say, we totally allow mistakes. Just don't repeat it and make it do it a second time. Well, clearly, the vast majority of people are making the same mistakes over and over and over again, or you wouldn't have a 77% failure rate within that company's 8th to 10th birthday. So, Scripture says humans do the same thing as a dog returns to its vomit. It's true. So people do make the same mistake over and over again. We just can go from company. I can go from company to company to company and go, that's a repeated mistake. That's a repeated mistake. That's a repeated mistake. I
It's like
thought you
history
guys were,
repeating itself, isn't it? Like bad history repeating itself over and over again over
yeah.
the
And it's the
centuries.
definition of insanity. Well, we're just going to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Well, well, we don't do that here. Well, I can tell you right now, and that's why I created the bridge strategy audit. Just like the financials need to be audited at a forensic level, I was the one that created and trademarked an audit for a company's commercial strategy and go-to-market strategy.
Mm,
So if they've done a product launch and they're not seeing that 30% growth and customer adoption rate year in, year out, there is kryptonite in that commercial strategy and commercial tactical execution. And people say to me all the time, well, Craig, we mostly focus on the commercial strategy. Well, that's great. What about your commercial tactical execution? Well, we mostly focus on the strategy. I said, that's really interesting because if you take the Navy SEALs and let's say they're doing a black ops operation and they need to rescue a hostage. There's only one or two strategies to do the most effective way. The rest is all tactical. And if
Mm,
they turn left and they're supposed to go right, that whole platoon is going to get absolutely killed. It's
mm,
no different in business. Your strategy, there's only so many strategies, at least in my industry. There really is only so many strategies if you're trying to get a product into a hospital or a surgery center or an endoscopy center or a physician office. There's
but
only
what
so
you
many
do though,
strategies.
like what you do is also transferable skills to any other industry, isn't it? It's just that your focus
Correct.
is in the medical
Correct.
field.
It's just easy for me to default to, surgical devices or pharma or biopharma or digital health, right? But I can go into this, I can do the same process in any industry, in any company, and I can pinpoint through my audit where in the 10 components of commercialization, where they have so much kryptonite.
Mm,
We define kryptonite as the gaps and deficiencies that prevent high levels of customer adoption.
right. Now, what's your advice with those that are planning to start up or launch a new product? So what should they focus on?
So it's kind of interesting. I just created and wrote a 9-page article on the four uncompromisable strategic imperatives
Mm,
that chief commercial officers and chief revenue officers need to focus on that generally speaking, they don't. Because if you were to ask one question to 100 chief revenue officers or 100 chief commercial officers and say, can you name the 10 components of commercialization? You might get one or two people that'll know it. That's pathetic. And it it translates that translates to why most companies, the overwhelming vast majority of companies, do not have a high rate of customer adoption.
mm.
If you have a high rate of customer adoption, you're going to have high revenue. If you have high revenue and you keep your SG&A, as our friend Adam says, keep it 20% or below, guess what? You're going to have a 10% or greater EBITDA. Guess what? You're a self-sustaining company that doesn't need any outside money to keep you afloat.
All right, for those of you that don't know who Adam is, who is Adam?
Go ahead.
No, you go. He's good friends with you.
So Adam Coffey is a guy that is just an extreme wealth of wisdom, not just intellect, but wisdom, right? And
Mm,
and I always say that wisdom is the proper use of intelligence. And so somebody who's had what, like 6, 7 exits over almost $3 billion with a B in
yes.
exits, like that is so extremely uncommon that it's hard to fathom, right? Because you look on the news and people are talking about all these billionaires. Well, there's like 1,400 of them in the whole planet out of 8 billion people. There's 1,400 billionaires, right? Like it's so minuscule that it's again it's hard to wrap your mind around. Um, I love his 30-20-10 rule. 30% growth, no matter how old your company
Yes.
is, no matter what products you have, 20% or less SG&A expense. And then if you do those two things, you should have a 10% EBITDA or greater. Um, and unfortunately, I'm going to open up a can of worms here, but when these people in leadership are hiring their friends that have not
Mm,
mastered the art of their business craft, you're not going to get a 30-20-10 um, outcome.
outcome. Yeah. So now let's go back into the current problem that a lot of people tend to always bring up, right? What, how can a small business with a tight budget still get noticed? What would be your suggestion of doing so the right way?
Yeah. So again, the job of somebody who's going to be in charge of the commercialization of that product or service. Let's say it's a startup company, and let's just say there might be three people in the whole company, right? And
Mm,
they are getting all their ducks in a row, getting ready to product launch, go to market strategy. They're looking at it. The first thing they should do, whether they have some venture capital support or not, is to create awareness. What is the one thing that is so effective in creating the awareness, first of the company, and then the other two would be either the product or the service that they are going to offer to that target market that they're focused on? The first thing is using public relations to talk about what the problem or deficiency is in the marketplace, and then take the articles that that public relations company helped put out there onto the business wire, and then all these media outlets take up um the articles,
mm,
and then it's the company then that needs to disperse those articles to their target market to create the awareness of the deficiency, because not every product or service solves a problem, right? Because people buy products because it might solve a problem. Sometimes it's vanity, right?
mm,
Why would a man, buy a $200,000 sports car? Why would a woman buy a $3,000 handbag? It's vanity. It's just
right.
vanity. That's what it is, right? It's, oh, look at me. So vanity is one reason people buy. The second reason people buy is it solves some type of deficiency either in their business or in their personal life, right? And that's the type of stuff that you want to get out there to the market, so that the reason that somebody would buy it pops up into their mind, and it's what I would call frontal thought, right? It's in the front of their mind, right? Using public relations that way is critical for startups. And guess what? 99% of startups don't do that because they're trying to commercialize like the big strategics. Oh, we just got $4 million in venture capital. Let's go and hire a bunch of sales reps. That is the
Mm,
dumbest thing they can do. And yet
yes.
try to find a startup that hasn't done that yet. I can't
All right.
find one.
So, what would you advise with people that want to do a startup service or product, but they're just waiting for a grant?
Well, they're going to have to use some of their own personal money to do some of that awareness, right? That awareness through the media outlets of the articles and things that they've put out there, in order to create magnetic attraction, they would have to start um, getting it out to their potential target market. And I say potential because we're going to see if that's the right target market.
Right. So
Most,
it really doesn't matter what industry people is, whether or not you're writing an article or you're educating someone through social media and things like that. It's more of getting that
it's awareness. That's the first strategic
awareness.
imperative that has to happen in order for somebody to say, I want to learn more. Once they say, I want to learn more, that's where the magnetic attraction starts.
Mm,
But it's only because of the awareness, which is why that's why those four strategic imperatives are so important. And I've done tons of research with AI and with Google, and I've looked at academic um, business strategy and commercial strategy books. Nothing's talked about the four imperatives. So my article recently It is like one of the only things out there that talk about the four strategic imperatives. And that's exactly how you get a product or service out to the market, for people to start saying, wow, you know what? I want to learn more about that product or service because I think I can use that. I think I need that. I think I want that. Right?
So, where is your article at the moment? I know you sent it to me, but is
Yeah,
there a link that
I've
you
got
could
it
give
on
me?
LinkedIn right now on my
Okay,
featured page.
right.
I'm trying to get it published. I'm trying to get some media outlets to take it. But because it's those four strategic imperatives seems to be normal, but
Mm,
yet they're not congruent in one setting and how they daisy chain off each other. You can't find anything. So it's weird. It's very strange. So I'm speaking at a conference in Houston in September. Um, that's called like Oktoberfest, MedTech Oktoberfest or something like that. Anyway, I'm speaking, and I'm going to be talking about the four strategic imperatives. And I'm going to have that article, those reprints made for the article for people to take because they need to start thinking differently. If you want to have high rates of uncommon customer adoption, then your strategies and tactics have to be uncommon and
mm.
unconventional.
Okay, so I'll put on the link to your LinkedIn and for people to find that
And they can
article.
download it. They can download it right off my featured section. So
Yeah.
it's not just to read. They can download it and print it out and have it themselves.
Okay, so those of you that want it, it will be on the description and the link of how you can find it through Craig's LinkedIn,
Yeah.
not Instagram,
Yeah,
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is my majority of my social media because it's my whole niche is working with senior and executive level leaders of startups and small medium enterprise. And even if there's some, multi-billion dollar conglomerates that would like to do an audit to see
Mm,
where the deficiencies are in their commercialization and go-to-market strategy, then, that's smart on their part too, because no different than a financial audit, we'll come in and do a commercialization audit.
yeah. All right, that's good. So, like, I know my listeners are all over the globe. Would someone be able to get in touch with you even though they're not based in the US?
Of course, absolutely. I travel to Dubai usually twice a year.
Mm,
I'm now starting to go to Europe 3 times a year. I just opened up an office about not quite 2 years ago. I've got an office in Dubai now, and I've got an office in Rome with one of my strategic partners. And we're one. My buddy Steve Bell and I, we're really the only two people that are doing what we're doing. So if companies are overseas and they want to come to the United States, um, if they talk to enough people, they're going to find the person that's going to give them the information that they want to hear. If they want to be effective, they need to call me or one of my team members, and they're probably going to get the information that they don't want to hear, but that's going to be highly effective.
right. Now, I'm going to bring it back all the way to what people would be asking consistently, and that's the concept of selling, because you said you were selling paint and then you started selling devices. So, how would you advise people in terms of the concept of sales? Because everybody likes to, like, that's the first thing they leverage out is sales without understanding the concept of sales. So, what is the couple of advice that you would say for people to look into to level up the skills in sales?
In, when you look at selling as a profession, it's the only profession that has no bar.
Mm,
And sales effectiveness is done through using emotional pulling dialogue. Some people call it neuro emotional persuasion,
mm,
but it's done based on the type of questions you ask, the inquisitive tone that you use, and getting the prospect to rationalize in their own mind without being told what to do that they pull the trigger and own the product or service that you're trying to get them to own. And that's such a different process because, you've got all kinds of different sales trainings.
Right. So
And
how
at
would
the end,
someone know that a sales training is the right sales training to adopt?
their results, their effectiveness. If their effectiveness sucks, probably don't want to use that sales training program anymore. Consultative selling and relationship selling is dead.
Hmm.
Now you're going to get all kinds of emails that I'm like a guy that's completely out of touch. Well, if relationship selling was so effective, why do 9 out of 10 sales reps who use it never meet their objective?
Hmm.
If consultative selling was so effective, why do 9 out of 10 sales reps not meet their annual numbers objectives? Consultative selling was really good and relationship with selling was really good from about 1977 until about 2020. When the pandemic hit and we went on lockdown, thank God I was in Texas. I wasn't locked down very much. Um,
Well, wait till you're in Australia for half the year.
yeah, we were locked down for about, I don't know, realistically here in Texas, we were locked down for probably, gosh, I'm trying to think. I don't even think it was fully 60 days.
Oh, right. I don't know. I'm still bitter about it from Sydney, like 6 months the
Yeah.
first year and the next 6 months on the second year.
It was a great
Anyway.
experiment. It was a great experiment to see how many sheep we have without critical thinking skills, right?
Yeah,
Seriously, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
And so, point being is when the pandemic hit, something happened that we can explain it all day long that we think, but we really don't know what happened to our psyche. The way we buy products and services now is completely 180 degrees from the way we bought from 1977 to basically March of 2020.
Hmm.
Consultative selling and relationship selling really worked, but it doesn't work that way anymore. Because
Hmm.
even when you know somebody, now they say, well, send me your information and let me look at it first. And then if I'm interested, I'll let you know. Even if you're really good friends with people. So they're looking for value in the product or service to see if it's what they want or
Hmm.
need before now that they're really even interested in getting a presentation. So now you have to use emotional, like persuasion questioning and dialogue just to now get them interested enough. That's where the awareness, the attraction, the adoption, and the retention is that four-part strategic imperative framework of how we buy and how we have to position the products and services that we offer to our target market
Hmm.
for them to even be interested in buying,
So would you
right?
say the concept of selling would be the same concept of looking at how social media works, like or advertising works, where through the generation, the way that we sell has to kind of change with the understanding of how the people in this day and age in terms of how they think.
It's totally how they think, right? I
Right.
mean, if I'm trying to sell you a new microphone for this podcast, I have to use a different type of tonality. I have to ask you questions that disrupt the normal neurotransmitter of how you're expecting me to answer questions,
Hmm.
right? What would you change about what you're using now? Like that stuff's done. I can think of 300 objections just off that one question, and that's how consultative selling is done. What keeps you up at night? Talking to you. That's what it keeps. You know what I mean? That's what a
Right.
prospect would say to me. Talking to you keeps me up at night.
Right. So the
Oh, what are you trying
language
to
has
sell
to
me?
change according to the generation and the
Right.
current
And
day
and
and
Gen Z is going to buy different than millennials, and Gen
mm,
X is going to every generation that is living right now buys in a different way, but yet because of the pandemic, we also buy in a very similar way.
Yes.
because we're looking for solutions. We're looking for a Louis Vuitton handbag, right? We're looking for that high-end Mercedes because of vanity, right? We're looking for um, something that is more effective than what we're using now because it's going to cut time by 20%, or it's going to eliminate, it's going to give us an opportunity to um, do our hobby more effectively, right? Like that's how we're thinking now. So in there's no product that's going to sell itself. Somebody still needs to create the reach out
Mm.
to create the awareness that fosters into the attraction, then sparks customer adoption. And then if the product works really well, then the customer turns into a client, right? Because until they buy, they're not a customer. They're always a
Right.
prospect,
Absolutely.
right? And then when the customer buys, they buy once or twice, maybe, right? And depending on the product or service, maybe it's a one and done buy, right?
Right.
Maybe. But if it's a reusable product or if it's a disposable product that needs to be keep being used, then how can you take that customer that's bought once or twice or three times and turn them into long-term retention of a client that's going to buy for the rest of that product life cycle? Nothing's for life, but every product and service has a life cycle.
Mm. An expiration date, as they say. Yeah.
100%. Every product has an expiration date on the usage of it or viability of it because if something else is not being innovated to replace it,
Mm.
right? Now in my industry that I've spent so many years in, um, there's a negativity about sales reps. Well, guess what? Without sales reps, we'd still be using technologies from the 60s. How's
Yes.
that working for you?
Yep.
I've said that to surgeons. They're like, oh, I don't deal with sales reps. Really? Are you still using products from the 1960s? Well, no. Why would you say that? Well, because we bring you the new technologies.
Yes. No, I
Without
remember,
without
like,
us, you're not
yeah.
using the newest technologies.
So my dad's a doctor in Malaysia, and I remember sales reps coming into his clinic to tell him the current trend of
Yeah.
whatever technology or whatever drug out there,
Yeah.
to bring it into his clinic.
Without industry, there's no innovation.
Hmm. There's a lot of questions I could ask, but I need to ask this one particular
I
one.
told you I'm going to be provocative because, and again, it's not because I know it all. It's just because, well, I get coached and it sparks stuff that I've never thought of before.
Right.
Um, and I'm not a huge fan of mentorship. Mentors aren't
Mm,
going to tell you, they're not going to be hard on you. They're just not because they don't want to hurt your feelings. But you can be hard on somebody and still be kind, right? But being hard on
absolutely.
somebody is challenging where they're at because you want to see them go further
Mm,
and be more effective.
yeah.
You don't
No,
have to be a jerk. You just need
absolutely.
you just need to push you just need to push them to an uncomfortable spot in a way that you're actually still for them and you're
Right,
not trying to beat them
but
down.
uncomfortable enough for them to still be inspired to continue and push on
100%.
beyond what they
That's what's
think.
missing in the corporate world. It really
Right.
is.
Mm.
That's
Okay,
missing.
my question before we get on with another 2 hours. So with people that are selling, right? I know they're either leveraging out to salespeople that they bring onto the team, or they're bringing in advertising or marketing. So what is your thought in terms of the difference between the marketing and the selling part? Should someone focus more on the selling part before the marketing, or should they do both at the same time if someone is starting?
Marketing includes public relations and branding. Marketing, when you boil it all down, this is the definition of marketing.
Okay, so it's not like paid advertising immediately when you're trying to launch something if you're not
Well, you
known.
could. You could do that. It's not wrong, right? That creates the awareness and
Mm,
potential attraction, right?
okay. But what
Um,
happens if budget there is a budget in place and finances is like they're not lucrative enough to like just spend money on anything.
Well, that's when they have to call me, and then I will work with them, and my team will work with them to use the money that they do have that will give them the best bang for the buck on awareness and attraction. So there needs to be an equal amount of marketing dollars and sales dollars together. Without marketing, people don't know your product and service is available. So when you boil it down, that's what marketing is. It's nothing more than letting the world know your target your target market. It's letting the world know that your product and service is available for them
Hmm.
to own.
So should someone just put money in advertising without having a salesperson? Or is it important to still have a salesperson?
Advertising generally reinforces, but it also does both attraction and awareness as well. It really depends on how much money they have to be able to create the awareness
Hmm.
and the attraction. Again, I wish there was a cookie cutter answer for that.
I think it's trial and error, really, isn't it?
It can be.
Right.
Um, the problem, so I was just talking to somebody, well, actually it was yesterday. I had a meeting for about a half an hour with a startup founder. He's got 6 people on his team. The product is um, in the process of the US FDA getting cleared so they can, bring it to market. And he is very close to getting about $4 million in venture capital funding. And he was telling me that he wants to hire 12 reps. And I said, why do you want to do that? Well, we got to let people know it's out there. And how much is each rep going to, what's the total compensation for each rep plus the benefits of the company that you're going to provide for them? What's the total expense per rep? He said, well, it's going to be around $300,000 to $330,000 per rep. Okay. And I said, how much public relations can you buy for $330,000 to
Hmm.
create awareness and attraction with marketing? He goes, so you're saying we shouldn't hire sales reps? I said, no, I just don't think you need as many as you think you do.
Right.
Because I said, you're going to waste about $2.7 million in the first 18 months. And it's going to take on average 4 to 8 months to get into every hospital.
Hmm.
So I said, you're going to be paying these people to sit around. I say sit around. They're not really sitting around, but they're going to be targeting hospitals all over the United States in their territories. But the average hospital is going to take between 4 and 9 months to get your product approved so that the physicians and surgeons can evaluate it.
Hmm.
Then they have to evaluate it. That's going to be 3 months. And you're going to be providing free product more than likely, even though it should be illegal to do that. That's the way it works. And I said, then you're going to wait about another 2 to 4 months after the evaluation, while the value analysis committee of the hospital is going to try to figure out if they should purchase your product and stock it on the shelves so that the surgeons can use it day in and day out. That is the realistic time frame. And oh, by the way, if you're not on a GPO, group purchasing organization contract, you might have to wait 3 years till the next contract bidding is up in order to get that product into the hospital system. So that's a whole nother story. And so they were like, Craig, you really don't bring us encouragement. I said, you know why? Because I want you to have your eyes wide open.
Right.
So I said, instead of hiring 13 reps, hire 5. And then hire us to come in and work with you and come alongside of you to use some of those dollars that you're saving to create awareness and magnetic attraction in an uncommon and unconventional way so that when your reps that you do have in your little company go and knock on a door of a physician or a hospital administrator,
It'll
they've
be
heard about your
easier.
product, they've heard about your company, and they want to learn more.
Mm.
Mic
That's
drop.
that is the exact advice I mentioned to a friend of mine. But yeah, no, I appreciate you saying it. I appreciate you saying it. There you go.
I hope that didn't come across as arrogant. I was just
No,
trying to be
no,
silly.
no, 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 no. Look, it's sometimes it's things that people need to hear, right? Because they're unaware, and it's
This
having
stuff isn't being taught in MBA programs.
right or a
Right?
bachelor
It's
degree.
so funny. I'm kind of harsh on people with an MBA. I've got an MBA. I don't put that MBA after my name because it only impresses people that have one
Yeah,
and people who don't have one. It doesn't
right.
impress people who've built 3 and 4 companies or even one company from scratch into multi-millions. It doesn't impress them at all.
Mm.
So I don't even put MBA after my name. You'd have to look into my resume or on my LinkedIn profile on the education to see if I have an MBA or not. Because it doesn't impress anybody.
No. Yeah, true. We can go
I'm
on
telling you,
forever, and
I've
this will be
offended some people
amazing.
listening to this program.
Oh yeah, definitely. People are searching. So I'm gonna put Craig's information on the description. You can search him out. You can investigate what he does. You can look into his MBA and stuff like that. But
They'll be sending me rotten tomatoes.
no, no, you find like baskets in front of your houses now. But look, if anyone's interested to know more about how Craig can help you if you're in the medical industry, or at least he can redirect you in the right path, I will put down all the description and information on the description, and also the article for those of you that are curious to read about that article, so you can search it on his LinkedIn profile. But yes,
Well,
Craig,
I'm going to interrupt you for a second because I'm hoping people call you as well for their businesses, right? Because you can bring them an uncommon and unconventional way of doing things and decision making that will prevent them from returning to, like I said earlier, returning to their vomit that doesn't work, you know?
they should. They should. Thanks for that.
You're
Thanks.
welcome. I mean,
Thanks for the
it's
marketing
real,
too.
right? That's the thing. People are not gonna get stroked by me, and it's not because I don't want to encourage them. It's that I would rather have them be really effective, and when they make a lot of money, they come back to me and go, "Man, thanks for giving me this uncommon wisdom and ways of doing things. Because
Mm,
now look at my business. It's killing it. I'm taking 4 vacations a year with my family. Guess what? I'm doing awesome. And it's because I didn't do what is the most common thing to do because common equals broke.
mm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Think outside the box. Absolutely. As I always say. So, well, thank you again, Craig, for being here and
Yeah,
spending some
it was
time with
good.
me. Yeah, I appreciate it. I truly appreciate it. And, I hope all of you guys really benefited from this. Remember, no rotten tomatoes. I will hunt you down. Um, having said that, if you guys like this episode, please do, like, follow, and share this because you never know, somebody out there may benefit from this. But other than that, thank you, Craig. And thank you all of you for tuning in for today's episode.
Yeah, it was awesome.